Boz. Welcome to Sunday night, and I am back in South Dakota, not coming to you from Hawaii, but also coming off of a pretty heavy week. So I am actually live from the farmhouse in my hometown after a huge eventful week of celebrating my dad's life and putting his body to rest, but also just appreciating how much his life meant to me. And I can't begin to say thank you for all of the amazing reach outs and prayers and condolences during what is a very difficult time. So you can see I'm actually in my mom's sewing room. This is one of the places where I've told lots of stories in my world, but the stories I like to talk about are almost all from this farmhouse. So this is where my mom taught me how to sew and my children how to sew, and many of my prom dresses and lots of crafts were done in this room to say, well, we can't figure that out. We don't have that ability. Let's just figure it out. So tonight I have a really good show for you, but what I don't have is my Dr. Boz kit. I left that at my home and didn't bring it to the funeral, and just haven't been home since then. So I am, there's people losing feed. So I wonder if, I'm just going to stay put for a second because I see several folks talking about a lag or having trouble, and I will switch internets here really quick if that's the case. So if I just have one more person tell me that that's the case, I'm going to flip over to a different plan. Let's do that. Okay, so connection seems slow. Okay, I have everybody saying that. I will switch over to a different internet. I had a suspicion this would happen. I have a really good show for you tonight, so I want it to be connected really well. And if it's not, I will just keep playing with it a little bit. So thanks for increased volume if you can. All right, yeah, that was the other thing. I'm going to try one more thing with volume too. So it's working now. So the internet says it's strong, so I will give it legs for YouTube. All right, so let me try. Very patchy connection. Turn off the volume. Okay, I'm going to do two more things. One's going to be the volume fix. I'll see what that's like, and then I will flip over to a different internet connection. So just thanks for being patient. Farmhouses are great. So testing. Okay, I think the volume's going to work better when I do it this. I'm not, so arrogant that I can say I know everything about the ketogenic diet, but there are a few places where I've found wonderful feedback and little teachable moments. And one of these is the medium chain triglycerides. So just going to see if anybody can see me or hear me. Somehow they can't get the internet to work well. So I'm going to give a couple more minutes here. I can always cut this out of the live feed, so I'm just going to keep trying for a couple more minutes because it really has all right, now it's green. I don't know, it says it's in the green zone again. Does your internet look good, Mom?
Yeah, but you don't have fiber optics, so it's hard optics.
Okay, there you are. Okay, you're back. All right, so I have everybody saying it looks pretty good, sounds pretty good. I reran around and made sure all the kids were off of electronics, and I'm going to try again, and we'll see how this works. So tonight's message, the one thing I would like to hear is the sound better, because I have a microphone, and I just want to know if that is too loud or not too loud. See and hear you on and off here in Australia. So sad. Freezing still, but better. I can hear you now. I can see you. There is a lag. It's good. Well, I'm gonna try it, and if I need to re-record it, I will see what we can do. I really want this message to get out there, and I've been working on it for before I left from Hawaii, so like 4 or 5 weeks, and then I put it on put it on hold to find a connection that I could spend time going through the algorithm of what I was trying to get across. But I usually start my shows out with a check of my ketones, but I don't have the ability to do that. I do have some pretty good feedback from last week where I led my first community fast, and we fasted for 72 hours. The 72 hours was something I had done regularly for a while, but hadn't done that for probably 4 or 5 months. Maybe 3 or 4 months, somewhere in there. And I just really can't believe how much better I got through a rather emotional week, a rather stressful week, and found, at least a high level of peacefulness during that whole, one of life's top stressors is to lose a parent. So I have several of you asking about Grandma Rose and how she's doing, and she's surrounded by family. She is a strong woman of faith and has been definitely rewarded this week by her community here in little town South Dakota, but also her family and her brothers and sisters in faith, if you would. So I'm going to go to my little we're going to talk about triglycerides today. We're going to do some sciencey things. So maybe it's good that some of you are having some glitchy. You have an excuse to say, you know what, the feed wasn't good. I couldn't watch that one. I really like this topic. So I'm going to give you a little bit more about this as I walk through the keynote here. And it is something I found fun and interesting to do. Let me see if I got to find my keynote. I'm actually going to do one more thing here on this side. So for those of you that did actually get into the class this past week, I just want to say thank you for helping contribute to one of Grandpa Rich's legacies, which was to help with, it's so not sexy, but it's definitely what he would want, is his church needed a parking lot, and parking lots are expensive, and it's been a mud parking lot for 30 years, and so I opened up the class that I was teaching, and I hadn't had it open since the first class, but I opened it up for the past week, and then every sale had a percentage that went to the parking lot fund for my dad. It turns out the parking lot's a lot more expensive than I thought it was, but we made a pretty good chunk of a dent into what they need to raise, so that feels good to me. All right, so now I'm going to go into, my keynote is frozen right now, of course, because why wouldn't it be? Let's see if I can. So I'll tell you what inspired me to do this topic, because my keynote is opening. It's taking a couple seconds here, and of course it is. There we go. Here we go. And let's go to play. Let's go to here and push play. Okay, so what I wanted to teach about was the triglycerides. And what inspired me to do this was during the first class that I put on for the ketogenic diet, the one that's called Consistently Keto, I found that there were so many people struggling with the inability to absorb fat. And like I said when I started out, maybe you didn't hear because of the connection, but this is one of those topics that has been on my list of top 50 that just needs some attention and time. That when people have the inability to absorb fat, there's a few rules that I put out for my patients, and I did a really thorough job of explaining the plan in the class I put on Consistently Keto. But I thought I'd do a little bit more of diving into why why I tell patients to lick the spoon. And we're going to go through what that means by the time we get done here. So we're going to talk about triglycerides. And triglycerides have 3 strings of fat. That's what the tri stands for in the Latin word for triglycerides. So I drew these fats out to be kind of like ropes, and there's 3 of them in these molecules. The top of the molecule is connected by a glycerol, which is a sugary or glucose-based molecule. And these 3 strings are connected together, kind of tied together, and they mobilize around the human body, offering not just a dense delivery of fuel, but some other properties that I think go uneducated. So let's start by looking at, let's see if I can get this next slide to go. So hold tight. Try this again. So let's see if we can get our glycerol to show up on here again. There we go. Now we're unstuck. And then we unzip what we call unzip a triglyceride. When you look at the fat that goes into our body, it doesn't always come in as fat. In fact, most of the fat that's in our storage throughout our body comes in the form of high calories in processed food, in carbohydrates. Oh my goodness, what a tough moment here. So we are going to skip that slide and go to this one. So if I look at the long, medium, and short chains of triglycerides, that is the purpose of what I'd like to cover today. So in the length of these strings, if you would, fat molecules are measured by the number of carbons that are in those ropes or those strings. So we call them short chains if they only have 4, 5, or 6 carbons in their chains. We call them medium chains if they have 8 or 10 carbons in their chains. And if they have more than 12, we call them long chain triglycerides. So it really matters to you when we're looking at people, especially those people who struggle with the ability to absorb fats. So they say, you know what, I've done that ketogenic diet, but before I did keto, I had gastric bypass, and I really can't handle eating high-fat foods. My gut just doesn't agree with me. And of course, that's a signal to the physician, to the team that says, danger, danger, we need to help you through this. So we're going to start by just showing off a little bit about the small chain triglycerides, noticing that those dark gray circles in the center are the carbons. So 4 and 6 are your small ones. The medium chain triglycerides are when you have 8 to 10 carbons. And when we look at the long chain triglycerides, I put a whole bunch of these on here. They're usually an even number, and the side chains are what all the chemistry people will get. They'll spend a lot of time talking about that. We're not going to spend time talking about that. But what I think is powerful is how much, if you ask most of the ketogenic community, they'll say, yeah, we can turn fat into ketones. But what I think is very interesting is we get energy from that fat based on how well our mitochondria can use the different types of fat. We turn the strings of fat into ketones and use ketones as energy for a small portion of your fatty molecules. But your muscles mostly use these different forms of fat. So I love this little zipper process where you take one of the triglycerides, you take the string of that fat, and you watch what comes from that as a host of ketones. And you can think of it, and I've used this as a teaching point before, is you kind of unzip those C8, C10 strings, and you get a bunch of ketones. But the place that that's happening in your body is the liver. What I think goes unnoticed for many people studying the ketogenic diet, or superficially studying at least, is that they think, oh, these ketones are going to feed all of my muscles. And that's not exactly how this works. So what I like to show is not just the sizes of these, but we're going to talk about what happens when you put in different lengths of fat to your gut. So bile acids are, you've probably heard of bile. When people have a difficult time with a nausea or vomiting, and they'll say, I threw up bile. This is the part from your gallbladder or from your inner liver that emulsifies fats to make them absorbable. But what I think is interesting is in the world of fats, the short chain fats and the medium chain fats do not need bile to be absorbed. The long chain fats do. Let's just take a little bit of a, let's take a picture of this, maybe. Oh, my poor computer. Hang tight. It's a bad sign because my computer's so hot I can barely touch it. Like, oh, come on, don't die now. Please not today. Please not today. There we go. Let's go here. All right, so I want you to see this is your gut. This is your kind of a 3D image of your body. We're going to really hone in to what happens inside your gut. And I think most people know what a gallbladder is, but we're just going to make sure we don't skip that for you. That's a gallbladder. And you can kind of see the shadow of the liver hanging out behind the gallbladder. And that bile, or that substance that emulsifies fats, drains into a part of your intestines way at the top. And we're going to look at these triglycerides coming, and we're going to pretend that all your triglycerides come in this perfect form. As you eat them, these are the short and the medium chain triglycerides, and you'll see them kind of get into a bolus of food, and they then zip to the next layer of the gut without any bile being needed to be added to their gut. The gallbladder is not necessary to absorb short and medium chain triglycerides. It's at least 3 times a week that I get an email or a message on the channel saying, Doc, I don't have a gallbladder, I can't do this ketogenic diet, or Doc, my gallbladder has stones in it, I get pain whenever I eat fat, I just can't do the ketogenic diet. And I would first of all encourage you to read a little bit more. That gallbladder is there to help absorb specific fats. But if you're just trying to wake up a tender or overused or maybe underused gallbladder, starting with some of the short or medium chain triglycerides is not a bad idea. When I look at people that are the most fragile, they have 4 bites of a high-fat food and they are in the toilet with malabsorption. And I really find it tragic because their whole inner body is failing to really be able to repair and nourish from the inside out. So if you look at the next, contrast, if you would, we're going to look at some of the long chain triglycerides. Now, let me just make sure you understand what long chain triglycerides are. These are fats that you would find in butter and cream and in lard. They are, many of your plant-based fats are that. Medium chain triglycerides are kind of goofy. If you look at short chain triglycerides, you can find them, but they're really awful tasting. They're very acidic. So mostly nobody eats short chain triglycerides. We eat medium and long chain ones. But even the medium ones are kind of hard to find. You'll find them in breast milk, but you'll also find them in some of the products from goats, and as well as some products from coconuts. But when we look at long chain triglycerides, I want you to carefully notice those fats come to the bolus that happens to our food, and then the gallbladder has to deliver bile to this bolus and kind of emulsify those fats in order for them to absorb. So they kind of surround, I kind of tried to draw it in green there with some of the green fats there. And then those fats can now slide down that gut, and they will get absorbed once the bile does its job. But if you look at the folks who do not do a good job with emulsifying fats, it's the ones who are out of practice, or they've had a gut that's just not as forgiving. So we've got the short, medium, and long ones. We've talked about how short and medium are what we can eat, although most people don't eat short ones. They're very acidic. Long chain fats are the most common and very tasty, easy to find, but they require a lot more from your system. We went through how bile acids, or that ooze from your liver, it needs to surround these fats in order for you to absorb them. And now we're going to move on to your pancreas. So a pancreas, again, is very important for helping your body absorb nutrients. If you look at short and medium chain triglycerides, they do not need extra absorption. They do not need pancreas enzymes to absorb those fats. Let's try that again. You only need those pancreatic enzymes to absorb chains that are 12 units or longer. So when I get somebody who's had a pancreatitis, or their pancreas has had a damage from either gallstones, or sometimes addiction will really be tough on pancreases, but so does chemotherapy and some infections. And when they are trying to rehabilitate and say, I just can't have any fats, my pancreas isn't in shape for that. The next thing I teach them about is how, well, your pancreas has some rules about when the enzymes are needed. So in this picture here, I drew in a pancreas, and even though it sits much further back in the abdominal cavity, this is where we put it, you can still see our gallbladder sitting there off to the side, and of course our food that comes through our stomach. So let's start again with our short and medium chain triglycerides. Here they come as eating the food, forming a bolus, and once that bolus gets ready to move to the next space, it slides right past the pancreas without stimulating any need for, that little dot there was to say, yes, pancreatic enzymes are not needed for your medium and short chain triglycerides. So as you look at the long chain triglycerides, those fats come into the stomach just like before, form our bolus, and if they want to have any chance of not ending up into the toilet, it requires your pancreas to secrete those pancreatic enzymes, and again break down the way those fats will look to the rest of the gut before they can be absorbed. So I think that's very powerful. And you look at the long chain triglycerides. I think I was trying to show diarrhea on this one. That when you look at the danger of most people with fat malabsorption, those long chain triglycerides come into the bottom of their gut, and they're waiting. It's actually the first part of their intestines, but they're waiting for an answer in their system to be able to absorb and use that nutrients, and they cannot do it without the bile acids and the pancreatic enzymes. All right, so hang in there. Oh, my poor computer. Okay, I might have to bite the bullet this week, you guys, and buy a computer. Another one. Oh my goodness. Well, I'll just tell you what the rest of these say because I can't seem to get my computer to freeze from here. So as you look at the next place, what I think, oh, there we go. Oh, this is the one I really want to get to. So I'm gonna try and see if my poor little computer can limp along here. It says I'm offline, which is not a good sign. So let's just go through them and slide by slide instead of trying to animate it for you. If I look at this mitochondrion, that's where I have spent a ton of time making sure that the process for having the best health in patients starts with, do they understand what a mitochondrion does? And when we look at fat malabsorption and the ability to use fat, we talk a lot about gut, we talk a lot about malabsorption of the gut, and that post-gastric bypass that many patients suffer from. and they ward off as saying they can never do the ketogenic diet. But what I really like to show off is what happens to the mitochondrion when they eat medium or short chain fats versus the long chain fats. And this is where, in my personal experience, the least healthy patients in my practice have been malnourished to the point where their mitochondria are aging 2 or 3 times as fast as they should be. Let's go here and see if we can push play one more time here for my poor little computer. So yeah, that internal membrane and the internal and outer membrane of a mitochondrion, you can use different fuels. Like you can use glucose, you can use ketones for fuel. And I've spent a lot of time talking about the difference between a cancer patient using ketones versus glucose. But what I had not spent a lot of time explaining is that the source of most of the energy for your muscles is actually the triglycerides within your muscle cells. They are not, I mean, there is a component of a ketone that they're converted to, but they are really, they use triglycerides as a huge energy source. One of the signs of a very advanced and adapted athlete is the amount of triglycerides they store right next to their mitochondria in their muscle cells. So we're just going to remind you what a cell looks like there. This is the mitochondria inside the cell, but mostly I wanted to type out the word cytosol. That's the area outside the mitochondria, but also outside the nucleus. Maybe. So in that pink area is where you'll find a lot of that debris or extra proteins that patients end up with as their cells age. What I like to show you right here is short chain fats enter from the outside of this is actually supposed to say short chain and medium chain fats enter from the outside of the mitochondria to the inside of the mitochondria, and they do not need any extra help. When they advance through the mitochondria and send their energy along the electron transport chain, they produce energy. And that triglyceride is, again, the key source to most of the energy for hold on here. Most of the energy for our well, that's what I want it to be, but why are those little fellows there? They're not supposed to be there. Oh, we'll just keep going here. All right, so this time we are taking not those ketones, pretend those ketones aren't there. It is the long chain fatty acids that when you look at how well they are able to be used in the ketogenic diet, the long chain fatty acids turning into acetyl-CoA cannot happen unless something called carnitine is there. Carnitine is very easy for me to see in my patients with that are ketogenic, that are carnivore. It is very highly produced in animal products, but in my vegans or vegetarians, carnitine is actually quite low. And you cannot get those long chain fatty acids into the mitochondria unless you have carnitine present. One of the distinctive factors for the degree of malnourishment has to do with, unless they're using some of those medium chain triglycerides or the short chain, their malnourishment goes north really badly once they get to the part where they've depleted their carnitine. So in the end, this wasn't the beautiful presentation I was expecting it to be, but that's all right. One day back. If there's one thing I've learned about being on YouTube, it's have forgiveness for yourself when things don't go well, and I might have to do this again, this lecture again. The benefit that I was trying to get across for several of the patients who wrote into the channel and who really struggled with absorbing fat is this concept that I keep pushing and saying, which is lick the spoon. So I really want to communicate what that means. So as you look at the gut trying to do its job of absorbing fats, and we just went through how you got to have bile acids, you need to have a good pancreas working in order for those fats to be absorbed, unless you use something, one of the tricks, which is medium chain triglyceride. So I've had people go out and they buy medium chain triglycerides. I'm a real stickler about making sure that you look on the label for C8, meaning it's got 8 carbons or 10 carbons. Many times that cheapest C8 or cheapest medium chain triglyceride has got over 60 or 70% C12. So they get a real say, oh, I just bought the cheapest one. They all look the same to me. And if you look carefully on the back of the package, they're actually buying long chain fats. And that's not going to help you much. You really do need to have those long chain fats, not just coordinated for helping your absorption, but also, you need to have the medium chain fats coordinating for helping your absorption. But they really are there to help your mitochondria gain energy and transform that energy into a much more abundant and usable energy. So what I like to tell people to do is, instead of going out and getting a C8 MCT, first of all, look for the ones with C8, C10, not with the ones with C12. And then often they'll put it in their coffee and think it's going to be this magical results in their in improving their health. And their gut's not ready for that. They'll put in way too much at the beginning, and this is where it comes back to, I'll tell them to lick the spoon. So the other thing that I do is I have, again, I only put products on the market that I actually take or my family takes. So this is the one that the Dr. Boz one is. Again, no C12 in that. So pretty comparable in price, I think, when you look at the other products. But what I tell my patients that are gastric bypass and they're trying so hard to get past that barrier where they can't absorb anything, they are having that malabsorption. And in my heart, I know these are the people who really need it the most. I tell them, take one capsule, and then I tell them to bite the capsule open. And then the oil kind of goes on their tongue. So then the capsule's empty, and it's this tiny little amount of oil, right? But sometimes these patients who are so sick, they will do that. And within 40 minutes, they'll be in the bathroom with malabsorption. But I said, you have to train those cells to absorb the easy fats first. And when I mean easy fats, I mean the ones that don't take bile, they don't take pancreatic enzymes, they don't need carnitine to get inside the mitochondria and start giving you better energy. So I'm a huge stickler for saying, if we can heal you from the inside out, you don't need supplements, you don't need a lot of vitamins. Your body will nourish it. But if there's ever a team or a subset of patients that do not follow that rule, it is my patients with fat malabsorption. And you'll know who they are. You'll go to the forums or you'll look at the pages and they'll say, Doc, I get 4 days in, or I even get a day into eating your high-fat diet, and I can't handle it. My gut just, it doesn't agree with me. And that's the first clue that I have saying, uh-oh, somebody check their vitamin D. Vitamin D is another fat-soluble vitamin, and without a functional gut, they can't absorb fat very well, and that means they can't usually absorb fat-soluble vitamins, one of which is vitamin D. So as I look at the protocol that I use for patients when they are having a tough time, they can't seem to get past the first few days, I just have them get those little MCT, put them in your pocket, bite on one of them, and you'll just have a little oil coat your mouth. And then it doesn't have any taste to it, so it's not like it's awful or anything. But then the next day I say, now take 2, and then take 3. And then I have them put a handful in their pocket or take them with them on their day that they sprinkle 3 or 4 of them throughout the day. And we really want them getting to a pretty hearty dose of those MCT supplements. Close to like 12 to 16 capsules a day, or a couple of like 4 tablespoons of the oil when they're doing it in the oil form. So the purpose of explaining all this to you is I really do find that when I have one or two people ask a question, I'll try to answer them. But when I have a crop of people, a whole audience of people that struggle to see the solution, I try to put time into a video with animation and teaching. And this went not as good as I thought it would. So I'll probably do this one again. But I do find that, there's products out there that are worth your money and those that aren't. And then it's always my goal for my patients to eventually be off of the supplement products. But with a leaky gut, this is one of those places where I say, trust me, lick the spoon, bite the capsule. All right, well, that gets me to the end of my message. I will say I appreciate those of you that stuck around. And this topic is super important to some people. So if you know somebody who's had a difficult time with getting started on the ketogenic diet because they can't seem to absorb fat, this one is my go-to answers for them. Is they really need to start training their gut to absorb this. Even with all the hiccups, I hope you could get the message of the education and share this video with somebody who has that problem. I will sign off by saying God bless all of you that helped me through this week, and I will be back next.